Okay, today's daf is daf Shabbat Sadi Zayin. We're going to start at the very top. We ended with a very interesting section on Slofchad and who is Slofchad. Was he the Mikoshesh Etzim? Right, we started, how did we get here? Because we started with the wood gatherer in the Torah who ends up getting stoned for what he did. And why did we start there? Because there was a debate. Was his sin, was the fact that he was carrying them in the public domain, or was it possibly tolesh or ma'ameh? Right, so there was a debate about what Av Malacha was the one that he did, and one of them had to do with our topic, and that's how we got into it. And then we had this interesting machlok at Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira and Rabbi Akiva about whether the Mikoshesh was actually Tzlofchad, because the daughter said he died for his sin, and the question is what sin? So must have been Mikoshesh, to which Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira, we ended with this fascinating line where he said, I don't like what you're doing either which way. Either the Torah didn't tell us on purpose and you're letting us know something the Torah didn't tell us. And number two, if he's really not, if this wasn't him, well, you're making him look like a bad guy. You have to remember he sinned anyway. And now we're going to get to, well, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira, what was his sin? So first they asked Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira, the whole way that Rabbi Akiva learned it was through Gzera Shava, comparing the word Bamidbar. Bamidbar appeared there and appeared in the Mikoshesh, appeared by Tzlofchad also. So, Elahagamar Gzera Shava. What about learning the Gzera Shava? So, Gzera Shava lo gamar. He didn't have that Gzera Shava. Okay, we've learned before that a Gzera Shava is something that's passed down by a tradition. And only if you have a tradition do you learn the Gzera Shava. So he simply says, or we could say, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira must not have had a tradition about that Gzera Shava. Still, we have a problem because it says he died for his sins according to his daughters. Ella mehechahava. So where was he from? Where was his sin from? Mi vaya apilu hava. Maybe he was with the ma'apilim. Okay, he was with the people who, after the sin, again Parshat Shavua. Although I realized yesterday I should have said it's not Parshat Shavua for those in Chutz La'aretz. It's only in Israel. We're still off by a week, so it'll be the week after. After the spies go, if you remember, they're told they're not going to enter the land, and then a group of people tries to go into the land anyway. And they all end up dying, and maybe he was from the Ma'apilim. Kayotze b'davar talmir. Now we're going to have another machloket, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira, of the same type of machloket. Vayicha af Hashem bam. Now we get to Parshat Ba'alotcha. What happens? Okay, this is Parshat Shavua for those in Chutz La'aretz. So God got angry at Moshe and Aharon. You remember they were speaking about Moshe. It seems it was Miriam who was speaking about Moshe. We all know the story. Who gets leprosy? Miriam gets leprosy, not Aharon. And we all say, right, she was the one who spoke and he listened. So she got the tzarat, he didn't. But lo and behold, you're going to find something interesting here. So apparently, God was angry at both of them. From here, you learn that Aharon also got leprosy. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. So here comes Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira again. Amar lo Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira, Akiva. Ben kach uben kach atati li dena tadin. You're going to get punished for this. In kidvarecha, if you're right, haTorah kisatova atamagaleoto. Obviously, the Torah was trying to cover up for Aaron. They didn't want to say, for whatever reason, that Aaron did this, and therefore you're now letting people know. Ve'im lav atamutzi laz alotot tzadik, and if not, then you're basically right. If that Aaron didn't get sarat, then you're basically making him look like a bad guy, and he wasn't. So they ask Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira, ve'lahaktiv bam. Okay, they don't ask him directly, but they say, according to his opinion, it says bam, right? Which says God got angry at both of them. So sounds like there's some good proof for what he's saying. So they answer, this is not on, right, this is on Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira. So they answer, Ahuba nizifa ba'am. That's just that he was reprimanded. It doesn't mean he got sarat, that he got leprosy. Now they're going to bring a braita that, lo and behold, surprisingly, it's going to prove the approach that he actually had leprosy. Tanya Kamanda Amar Af Aharon Nitztareah. Dichtiv. Vayifen Aharon and Miriam. V'nei mitzorat. Now notice there's something strange in that pasuk. It says Aharon turned to Miriam and he saw, right, that she had leprosy. Now why did it have to tell us he turned to Miriam? We could have just said he saw she had leprosy. Tana shepana mitza'arato. So the Braita says, what is Vayifen? He turned away from, which means he no longer had leprosy. In other words, what happened? Why don't we hear about his leprosy? Because his leprosy went away. Her leprosy didn't go away. So he had a leprous mark or something, but he healed very quickly. She didn't, and that's why we have to go through the whole rest of what happens with her and her leprosy, and that's why we don't end up finding out so much about his. Amar Rish Lakish, in this context, in this vein, hachoshev b'ksherim lo kebegufo. One who is suspect of someone who's actually a good person, right, didn't do anything wrong. If you think that somebody did something wrong and they didn't, you're going to get punished in your body, lo kebegufo. Okay, generally, you'll get punished first by your possessions. And the hope is that that will bring you to repent and see your ways. Only when you do something really bad, you get punished in your body. Dichtiv. How do we know this? We're going to learn it from none other than Moshe. Moshe apparently was choshev b'ksherim. Where was this? In the beginning of Sefer Shmot, when God comes to Moshe and says, go speak to the people and tell them, I'm going to take you out of Mitzrayim. So it says there, Moshe says, Vehein lo ya'aminu li. Remember, Moshe has all these reasons why he doesn't want to go. One of them is, they're not going to believe me. What is he doing? He's choshev b'ksherim. He's saying, oh, you're assuming the Jews aren't going to believe you. The Galia Kamikuchabrichu, God knew the Mehemne Yisrael. Okay? God knew that the Jews were going to believe Moshe, and therefore Moshe is considered someone who's choshev b'ksherim. Amar lo, God said to Moshe, hey ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim, they are believers, the sons of believers. V'ata ein sofcha laha'amin. And you in the end are going to be punished that you're not going to believe. Okay? Or I don't know if you're going to be punished, but you're accusing them that they don't believe. And guess what? You in the end, you're not going to believe. Okay? And here we're going to see, it's not exactly belief in God we're going to see, but actually it is belief in God. Sorry. So basically they're saying that Moshe ultimately he's going to be the one who's not going to believe in God, and we'll see where we get this from. So, hey ma'aminim, how do we know God says they're believers, the sons of believers? Hey ma'aminim dichtiva yamen ha'am. When Moshe in fact comes to them, it says they believed him. B'nei ma'aminim, how are they the sons of ma'aminim? B'he'emim b'Hashem. This is about Avram Avinu, it was said, right? V'yachsheveh lo tzedakah. So it says b'he'emim b'Hashem, Avram believed in God. V'ata ein sofcha lahamin, shene'emar, yan lo ha'emantem bi lachti sheni le'nei b'nei Yisrael. The famous pasuk where Moshe is told you're not going to go into the land because, right, you and Aaron both, because you didn't believe in me, right, and debate about what exactly this is, but, right, likely it's when he hit the rock instead of talking to the rock, right, you didn't believe in God enough, and there you see that Moshe in the end was the one who didn't believe. He was suspect of others. Okay, now, where do we start? Do you know any point where Moshe was punished, that he had something in his body that was problematic? Mimai dilaka, where do we see that Moshe was lo kebegufo? So we were trying to bring Moshe as a proof. Hachoshev b'ksherim lo kebegufo. Dichtiv. Vayomer Hashem lo. In the same context there, when God's talking to Moshe and saying, go to the people, what does he say to them? Bring them signs for me, right? What are the signs? One of the signs is, Havena yadcha v'chekecha. And what happens? He puts his hand and he takes it out, and it has leprosy on it. So here you see, now we never think of it this way, right? You always read that story as Moshe was doing these signs and it's magic and look, he could prove that God is God, and this is the way he proved himself to the Jewish people. But first of all, number one, it shows they didn't really need the proofs. According to this, it sounds like they would have believed anyway. And the proof was really for Moshe. It was a punishment. The fact that his hand became leprous was actually viewed as a punishment to Moshe. Okay? Even though it was momentary, still, his hand was leprous. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about this hand. Amar Rabba v'itema Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, midat tova memehet lavo midat poranut. You see from here that good rewards come quicker than punishments. Okay? De'ilu. Now, this is a little bit opposite. Sometimes you always say it's much easier to break something and much harder to put it back together. This is kind of saying the opposite, that it's much quicker and this maybe it's saying God works against nature, because usually when you mess something up, it's much, much harder to put it back together. Go back to our earthenware vessel, right? It breaks, it's much harder to fix it. But, right, you always have those moments where you say, I can't believe in that 1 second what I just did, right? Imagine you get into you dent your car pretty seriously, one little thing, and then you have this huge mess on your hands. But according to this, God works in a different way. He brings the midat tovah very quickly, and the midat poranut much slower. Okay, the bad comes in a slower manner, and the good comes very quickly. How do we know this? Now what happened? Moshe put his hand in and took it out, and it was tzara'at. Then he put it back in, and he took it out, and it was cured. So there's two things. There's the midat poranut, how he became leprous, and there's how he was cured. And you can see a difference in the verse here. Midat tova, de'ilu b'midat poranut k'tiv vayotzi'ah. He took it out. V'hinei yado mitzorat kashelek. Once he took his hand out, it was leprous. But it sounds like when he put it in his chest, it wasn't leprous until it came out, and when it came out, it was leprous. But b'midat ilu b'midat tova k'tiv vayotzi'ah micheko v'hinei shava kivsaro. He takes it out from his chest, and it was already, right? It was already healed. Okay, so meaning it was healed when it was inside. So there you see that it was healed inside already, and therefore the midat tova comes quicker than the midat poranut michekohu deshava. Right? It was already hishava kivsaro. They say it was already shava from while it was inside. Okay, hu deshava bit kivsaro. Another thing about these signs, vayivla mate Aharon et matotam. One of the signs was that the mate of Aharon, the staff, turned into a snake, and then it swallowed up all the other. Right, what happened? All the other, the Chartumim, the magicians of Paro, also did the same thing. But then Aharon's mate, his staff, swallowed up all the others. So vayivla mate Aharon et matotam, amar Rabbi Elazar, nes b'toch nes. There were two miracles that happened here, because when we see it a second before that, it was a snake. And then it turns from a snake, it reverts back into a staff, and then it swallows up all the others. Okay, there's a bit of a problem here because it also says it swallowed up all matotam. It doesn't say it swallowed up all the snakes. So it seems like theirs also reverted back. A bit of a question on this. But anyway, they say it was a nes b'toch nes. Okay, now we're going back to our main issue of our Mishnah about throwing items from different domains to others. Before we do that, I meant to mention at the beginning of class, I forgot, but now I'll mention it. I mentioned it on Sunday that we're having Community Sunday, a Hadron Community Sunday, this coming Sunday, and at 8:30 Israel time, 1:30 Eastern Daylight Time, and then figure it out wherever you live based on those times. I'll be doing a Zoom where we'll learn that day's daf. I'll still teach it in the morning, and I'll record it, and it'll be up early for those who want to listen early. But if you want to come listen on the Zoom, you can listen on. We'll have a question and answer session. You can send questions beforehand to our email. And if you want to hear things about, whether it's about the daf, about the siyum, or anything of interest, you can ask questions, and it'll be a nice way to get everybody together. Okay. Now we're talking about a case of you throw an item from a private domain to another private domain through a public domain, through the airspace. I want to just go through a few terminology issues. We have, number one, we saw in the Mishnah, there's what's called moshit. Okay, a moshit is what they did in the Mishkan. This is when they carried and passed beams from one wagon to another wagon. Tomorrow we'll get really in depth about the beams and the wagons and how it worked and how wide they were and all that. But they would carry these beams from one wagon to the other. We learned already that they did it. It was higher than 10 tefachim off the ground because the height of the wagon, and by the time you get there, the height was above 10 tefachim. So even though normally we say above 10 tefachim in the public domain is a makom ptur, here you're going to be obligated anyway because that's the way they did it in the Mishkan. So again, they had the two Reshutei Yachids here are the wagons. The wagons are in a public space, but sometimes you can have something, a private domain within a public space. So this private domain to private domain through the airspace above 10 tefachim, that's called moshit. Then we have zorek. We're going to have to question, do we learn zorek from moshit? If we say we can learn one from the other, then it's going to be obligated even above 10 tefachim. Then we also have carrying an item for amot im reshut harabim. That we call ha'avara. There we already learned also, if you remember, from the Bnei Kahat. They carried things on their shoulders, and they were also above 10 tefachim off the ground. So also carrying for amot in reshut harabim, right? There's two issues. There's moving from one domain to the other, and there we saw also it's even two things. There's hachnasa and hotza'ah. There's bringing, right, the hotza'ah, carrying it out from private to public, and then there's bringing it in from private to public. And then there's havara, which is carrying for amot in the public domain. That's also forbidden. And like we said, if you're carrying it on your shoulder or something, or in your hand even, at a height of above 10 tefachim, you're still going to be obligated because of that law. So now the question is going to be about zorek. Is zorek above 10 tefachim? If I throw something and it goes through the airspace of the public domain on its way from private to private, goes through the airspace, there's a machloket about it. That's what it said in the Mishnah, okay, just to remind you. There's a machloket, Rabbi Akiva mechayev v'chachamim potrim. Okay, the rabbi's exempt, meaning it's only us from Rabbanan. Rabbi Akiva says you're obligated midoraita. So by Rabba asked the following question. Lamata me'asara pligi. He wants to know what's at the root of their machloket. Is it lamata me'asara pligi? Are they arguing under 10 tefachim? Ubaha pligi. Demar saval amrinan kluta kamishon uncha. By the way, we had this whole sugya before. We learned this whole sugya. Okay, we learned it on Dalet Amud Bet. I know it was a while ago. So this is one of those good examples of, even if you don't remember, we'll get back to it again, and maybe this time it'll make more sense. There we were really at the beginning of Shabbat. Now we know a lot more concepts. So is this the machloket that the whole thing was happening under 10 tefachim? You threw it at a low height. Ubaha pligi, and this is the machloket. Demar savar amrinan kluta kamishoncha. Umar savar lo amrinan kluta kamashoncha. Do we say, now this item never rested in Reshut HaRabim, so why should you be obligated at all? Well, we have a concept of the fact that it entered the airspace is as if it landed there. Because again, to be obligated for passing from one domain to the other has to have landed there. This never landed, it was in the air. So is the machloket between Rabbi Akiva and the rabbis, everything's happening within 10 tefachim, which is Reshut HaRabim, and the question is, do we view it, since it entered into the airspace, it's as if it rested there, in which case you're obligated then for passing it through Reshut HaRabim. And that's what Rabbi Akiva is b'chayev, and that's why the rabbis say you're exempt, because they say kluta is not kamishon chadamya. It just went through the airspace, there's no hanacha anywhere, and therefore, remember, you need akira, uprooting, and you need hanacha, placing it down. That didn't happen here. So is that the machloket? And if that's the machloket, then we'd say, aval, by the way, it helps if you have the sheet. I didn't put it in the chat today, but if someone wants to add it, my mistake. There's a sheet online, so someone can add it to the chat, that would be great. And those who are listening, you can open it up on your computers from the website. It's very helpful to have the chart. Or do we say that above 10, everyone agrees that you're exempt? Below yalfinan zorek mimoshit. Okay, now according to this interpretation, the machloket is only lamata me'asara, under 10. Above 10, they'd all agree. What would they all agree? Oh, they'd all agree. That's a makom p'tur. You're exempt. And then you'd say, lo yalfinan zorek mimoshit. You don't learn throwing from passing. Passing was unique, what they did in the Mishkan. They didn't throw the beams in the Mishkan. So therefore, we're not going to learn zorek from Moshe. That's one option. O Dilma, or do we say lamala me'asara plige, ubaha plige? Really, the machloket was above 10 and not below 10. And then you'd have to say the opposite, that everyone agrees. Okay, baha plige, the machloket is demar savar yofina zorek mimoshi, umar savar lo yofina zorek mimoshi. The whole root of the machloket is what we thought was obvious in the first option, which is, do you learn throwing from passing, from or not? Aval, lemata me'asara, but if it's under 10, divrei kol chayav, then there would be no machloket. Everybody would agree that you're obligated under 10, because under 10, and then you'd have to say, my taima, everyone agrees, kluta kamashon chadamya. So this is very basic, this question, because the question is, does everyone agree kluta kamishon chadamya? Does everyone agree you learn zorek mimoshit or not, or we don't learn zorek mimoshit? What's agreed upon and what's a machloket? Amar Rav Yosef, ha milta ibai le Rav Chisda upashta niele Rav Hamnuna. So Rabba asked the question, which one is it? And Rav Yosef says, oh, this was asked by Rav Chisda, and Rav Hamnuna explained. And this is what Rav Hamnuna said. He taught it from here, meha, from the following braita. First, we're going to have a braita, which doesn't exactly say what the topic is. It's missing the verb. Okay, so now you do something to it, right? It's going to be either passing it or throwing it from private to private through public space. But notice the wording here. The wording is different than by us. It says, Bireshut harabim atzma. In the actual Reshut harabim. Now, if you say the actual Reshut harabim, what do you mean? You obviously mean under 10. Because over 10, we don't call that the Reshut harabim. We call it a makom p'tur, an exempt space. So therefore, it must be it's talking about under 10. The question, and then it says, in this case, Rabbi Akiva mechayev v'chachamim potrim. So according to the Braita, these are the facts we have. We have, number one, we have the same kind of case. We just don't know, is it throwing or is it passing? So it might not be the same as ours. But the facts that we have are, Rabbi Akiva and the rabbis disagree, and it's talking about under 10. So mitakama b'reshut harabim atzma, pshita lamata me'asara pligi. Okay, that's what I just said. We know it's under 10 because it says reshut harabim atzma. Ubimai. So what's the case now? If you want to say they were passing, lamata me'asara hu d'machayev, lamala me'asara lo machayev. Wait a minute. If you were passing, and this is telling you it's only b'reshut harabim atzma, sounds like above there won't be a machloket. You're going to be exempt. We already know that passing, you're not exempt above 10 because that's what we said. That's how they did it in the Mishkan. So therefore, it wouldn't be. Oh, sorry, my mistake. I knew I set this up for a reason. Ma'avir is actually carrying something for Amud and Reshut Harabim. It's not Moshit. Moshit, we would say the same thing. If it was Moshit, we'd also say the same thing. For whatever reason, they don't bring Moshit. Ma'avir is carrying in the Reshut Harabim, carrying it, let's say, on your shoulder or in your hand. If it's that you're carrying it and you're passing it from one to the other while you're carrying it, well, that also we know. We already learned from Asa b'nei Kahat, right? V'hama Rabbi Elazar, hamotzi masoi l'mala me'asara chayav shekem Asa b'nei Kahat. So also you'd be obligated above 10. Basically, we're going to say, if it's talking specifically under 10, and above 10, the assumption is everyone would exempt. Can't be talking about carrying because Masa b'nei Kahat, they carried above 10 and they were obligated, and therefore we're, not that they were obligated, but that's how they did the Mishkan. Therefore, we're obligated on Shabbat. And again, it doesn't say it, but Moshit would be the same thing. So therefore, Elalad b'zorek, it must be zorek. In which case, what do we learn from here? Lamata me'asara hu d'machayev. Rabbi Akiva is only mechayev you if it's below 10. But lamala me'asara lo mechayev. And that gives the answer to Rabbah. Shma mina b'kluta k'mishum chaplige shma mina. And it must be that the machloket is Kluta Kamishon Chadamya. Rabbi Akiva says yes. Chachamim say no, and that's why the Chachamim exempt if it's within 10 tvachim of the ground. Upliga, now that's Rav Hamduna's approach, but he disagrees. We're going to see, potentially he disagrees with two people. It depends how you understand the last explanation, but right now he definitely disagrees with Rabbi Elazar. Pliga de Rabbi Elazar, Damar Rabbi Elazar, de Amar. Damar Rabbi Elazar. Mechayev haya Rabbi Akiva afilu lamala me'asara. Rabbi Elazar thinks, Rav Hamnuna just said that it's not above 10. There's no machloket. Rabbi Akiva is not obligating you if it's above 10 for Zoe, because we don't learn it from Moshit. But Rabbi Elazar says that he is mechayev of lamala me'asara. So now we're going to have a problem. So why did it say in that source that we just explained, that Braita, Rishut Harabim Atzma, which sounds like only under 10? So the answer, actually, according to Rabbi Elazar, it's not like either option of Rabbah. Rabbah set up, either they argue in one or they argue in the other. Comes Rabbi Elazar and he says they argue in both. The Braita used the wording, Rishut Harabim Atzma, to teach you that even in under 10, still the rabbis are going to exempt because they don't view it as if you put it down. But really, they have a machloket in both. They both disagree about Kluta Kamishon Umcha, and they also disagree about Zorek Kemoshit or not. Okay, do you learn Zorek from Moshit? So basically, we end up saying that they disagree about both scenarios. Okay, that's Rabbi Elazar, so he disagrees with Rav Hamnuna. And now it says, Upliga, lost my place. Okay, Upliga de Rav Chilkia Bar Tuvi. Okay, Rabbi Elazar disagrees with Rav Chilkia Bar Tuvi, and here comes the lack of clarity. Is it also a third opinion, and Rav Hamnuna disagrees with this? Or, and the reason why it's confusing is because he adds something that Rav Hamnuna doesn't say. He kind of agrees with Rav Hamnuna, but he adds one point that Rav Hamnuna didn't say. The question is, does Rav Hamnuna disagree with that point, or did Rav Hamnuna just not mention that point? Okay, in which case it's not clear. So, okay, we're about 15 lines from the bottom, maybe 18. If it's within 3 tvachim of the ground, this is the chidush that Rav Hamnuna did mention. If it passes, okay, this is a little hard to do, but let's say you throw it very low, okay? Thinking of baseball, right? And how much you can control how much you throw your ball. So if you can hit it, toch shlosha, 3 tvachim, if you happen to throw it within 3 tvachim of the ground, everyone's going to agree that you're obligated. Why? Because we say anything within 3 of the ground is as if it's on the ground, and then it's as if you actually placed it on the ground. So that's for a different halachic reason, which we're going to talk about soon. So that's what we call lavud. Okay, we'll see it inside in a minute. But now, so he adds that. The question is, does Rav Hamnuna disagree about that point? Or did Rav Hamnuna just not mention that point, but he would have agreed also? That's a debate. Lamala me'asara, but above 10, and this is like Rav Hamnuna, everyone agrees, divrei hakol patur. And the machloket is bigimel va'ad asara. Banu the machloket Rabbi Akiva Rabbanan. Okay, so that aspect he agrees with Rav Hamnuna. Tanya nami hachi, here's a brighter to support. B'toch shalosh divrei hakol chayav. Lamala me'asara eno ela mishum shvut. Okay, and this supports exactly Rav Chilkiah Bar Tuvia that under 3, everyone agrees you're obligated. Above 10, everyone agrees you're not obligated because we're not going to learn Zorek from Moshit, and therefore it's only D'Rabbanan. V'im hayu reshuyot shelo, now we're going to continue in this brighta and get off on a bit of a tangent because of it. If both Reshut HaYachids were his, and he passed it through Reshut HaRabim, mutar, then it's going to be allowed. It's not even Asr Midrabanan, okay, if it's Lamala Me'asara, to pass from a private domain to a private domain through the airspace of a makom p'tor, of an exempt space, it's allowed. Okay, and from 3 to 10, this is just the continuation of the Braita, there's a debate. Amar, so now we're going to go into this issue about imayu reshuyot shalom mutar. Lema tavatiyuv tedirav. This sounds like it contradicts Rav. Why? You could raise a contradiction from here against Rav. The Itmar, there's a machloka between Rav and Shmuel. Shnei batim b'shnei tzidei Reshut HaRabim. If you have 2 houses on either side of Reshut HaRabim, Rabba bar Rav Huna amar Rav, asur lizrok miseh l'zeh. You can't pass from one to the other. U'Shmuel amar mutar lizrok miseh l'zeh. You're allowed to throw from one to the other. Now, this is a bit of a problem. How could Shmuel possibly say that you can throw from one Reshut HaYachid to another Reshut HaYachid? Through Reshut HaRabim, there's no way he would say that. So the only way he could possibly say that you're exempt is if it must be that you own both spaces and you pass it through above 10 tfachim and it's a makom p'tur. In which case, what do you see here? Rav says, asur lizrok miseh l'zeh. So they're making an assumption. Because Shmuel allows this, it must be that's the situation. If that's the situation, what do you see here? Rav forbids it. And didn't we just say in the Braita it's allowed? So shouldn't that raise a contradiction against Rav? So then they say, no. The lav miyukim nelahi, didn't they already say that source is talking about kigon de midli chad umitate chad? Okay, the machloket between Rav and Shmuel is about a case where one is, I put a little picture on the sheet. You have one house is taller and one house is shorter, let's say, and you want to throw from the taller one to the shorter one. And then the concern is Rav forbids it, not because he thinks it's actually forbidden. If you go through a makom p'tur, you're fine. But he thinks there's a side issue here. He's concerned that maybe it'll fall in between the spaces. If it falls in between, it's going to land in a public domain, and then you might come to bring it into your own private domain. And that's why he forbids, and you can't learn anything from here about what he thinks. Really, he would actually think from Torah law, it's exempt, there's not a problem, and even rabbinic law, but there's some other side issue, and because of that, and it's only when one is higher and one is lower, and you have to really aim properly. We're going to get back to the whole issue of aiming later today. Okay, moving on. Now we're back to our lavud. One said to the other, not clear who said what. Where do we have this concept that anything less than 3 is viewed as if it's attached to the ground? But now we're going to learn it's not just attached to the ground. It's anytime you have a space of less than 3 tefachim, you can view it as if it's solid. Okay, even though there's space. For example, let's say your schach doesn't extend all the way to the wall. Okay, your schach ends, it's a little bit short, doesn't hit the wall. If it's within 3 tefachim of the wall, we view it as if they're attached. Okay, so there you have an example of lavud where it's not on the ground. So first, they kind of view it as if it's on the ground. So therefore, he says, the ground in public spaces, it's not like nowadays where we have pavement. The ground in those days was all dirt. There was no way that you could have it even. And generally, there'd be bumps. And if there's bumps, so there's no such thing. There's no flat space. It's not like they had a plane where they would measure the ground outside. So they say, so then why does it have to be less than 3? You could say 3 tefachim also. Sometimes there's mounds that are 3 tefachim high. So why did you do the cutoff exactly at under 3? Vitu, and additionally, haditnan, says in the Mishnah, Mishalshel tfanot milamala lamata, if you have your walls of the sukkah are going milamala lamata, but they don't actually hit the floor, imheim gvohim mina aretz shlosha tvachim psula. If they're 3 tvachim off the ground, they're pasul. Hapachom shlosha kshera. But less than 3, it's kshera even if the ground is really flat. In other words, it sounds like it's not just because there's bumps in the ground. So they say, the reason is by sukkah, and this maybe could explain Levud in general, is because your sukkah, we don't care if your wall doesn't go all the way to the ground, as long as it goes low enough that you can't, that little goats can't come in to your sukkah. Okay, right? Cats, we all know, come into the sukkah anyway, but little goats can't come in. So therefore, that's the height. And that's why they determined it. So that could be your proof for Levud. But they say, okay, well, tinach lamala, tinach lamata, lamala meika lamemar. That makes sense when you're talking about Levud close to the ground. But when you're talking about Levud up high, which like I explained in the sukkah walls, the issue of there's no gediyim that are going to get through there, that's not an issue that's relevant. So therefore, that's not a good answer for Levud. Ela, Levud dami, this is a bit of a cop-out answer, but it's when we don't have any other explanation. It must be a tradition. And it was a tradition passed down. Generally, they call this halacha l'Moshe Sinai. That's how we know it. We don't actually have a source for it. Tanu Rabbanan, next case. This is the reverse of what we just said. We were talking about private to private through public. Now we're talking about public to public through private. This also we learned in the beginning of the Masechet. Rebbe mechayev v'chachamim potrim. Rav Shmuel, so Rebbe says you're obligated. The rabbis say you're exempt. Rav Shmuel da'amr travayu lo chayev Rebbe ela b'rishutei achim mekorah. According to Rabban Shmuel, Rebbe only forbade it if it's got a ceiling on the Rishutei Achid. You could have a Rishutei Achid of a space with walls without a ceiling. If it doesn't have a ceiling, then we don't view it as if it landed in the private domain. But if it has a ceiling and it went through maybe a windows or an opening below the ceiling, then we're going to say, if you remember, we learned this, the house is as if it's full, right? You imagine all the air in the house as if it's in existence because it's got a roof on it. We view it as if anything that went through the airspace, as if it landed on something, okay? It landed on the airspace. So we view it as if it's a full house since it's got a roof, and there is a ceiling, and therefore everything inside is going to be, you're going to be obligated about anything that just even passes through. Now we're going to have a problem for this. Amar Rav Chana, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. This is a big problematic line, and in fact, I'll tell you right now, we're not going to actually resolve this line. Rav Chana passes down the name of Yehuda and the name of Shmuel. Mechayev haya Rebbe shtayim. In this case, Rebbe obligates you 2 times. Why? Think about it. If it's got a roof, and therefore when it goes through, it's as if it lands, well then, you're obligated 1, echad mishum hotza'ah, for taking out from public, well actually it's the opposite. 1, mishum achnasa should be the first. You took it out from a private domain, a public, and you put it in a private domain. And then it went from the private to the public. Even though this all happened in one throw, and it went flying through, 2 things happen there, right? By it landing, it ends up having 2 effects on 2 actions. And therefore, Rebbe says you're chayav twice. 2, you'd have to bring 2 sin offerings. Now, this is a major problem. Why is this a major problem? Because we just said yesterday that hachnasa is a tolada of hotza'ah. So you shouldn't actually have to bring 2 sin offerings. Maybe you did 2 actions, but 1, it's a tolada bimkom av, as we call it. And they're now going to say, the fact that Rebbe said this is problematic. Yativ Rav Chana v'kakashele. Rav Chana, who brought this statement, said this statement is problematic. L'meimer de machayev Rebbe atolada b'mkom av. Are you going to say that Rebbe thinks that a tolada, and this, if you do the tolada of the same av, you're going to be chayev 2 sin offerings? We've already learned, and not only that, but it said in the name of Rebbe, Hatanya Rebbe Omer, Dvarim hadvarim Eila hadvarim. We learned this. They darshan those words. Elu lamitet melachot. This is a reference to 39, right? We got there from Dvarim, and then hadvarim is 2, and Eila is 36, and we end up with, right, hadvarim is 2 plus 1. We have 3 plus the Eila, which is 36. We end up with 39. Shenem Rula Moshe b'Sinai. Now, what would be the point of counting lamitet melachot if not to say, we always say, minyan alamali. Why did they count how many there were? To tell you that you're obligated for each av. But a tolada, you're also obligated only 1 if you do a tolada connected with an av. So if you do hotza'an hachnasa, it's true you did two things, but you only bring one sin offering. So how could he possibly say you're obligated to? The first answer we're going to have is Rav Yosef. Amalei Rav Yosef. Mar ahamat nele v'kashalei de Rebbe ad Rebbe. He, who's Rav Chana, understood the statement. He learned the statement that way, that it was about Rebbe, and therefore he had a contradiction of Rebbe on Rebbe. But Anan, we, in our Beit Midrash, ad Rabbi Yehuda matninan. We learned that it was Rabbi Yehuda who said it, and it wasn't the case that we were talking about. It was about a different case. Below Kashalan, and therefore we don't have a problem. Now, even though he says we don't have a problem, because we say it's Rabbi Yehuda, it's true we're not going to have a problem about Rebbe himself, but even Rabbi Yehuda we're going to have struck, and this is why we're not going to actually find an answer. Even Rabbi Yehuda, still, how could Rabbi Yehuda say? And we still have a basic issue. It doesn't matter who said it. We still don't understand who would obligate a tolada b'mkom av. Generally, you wouldn't be chayav twice for hotza'ah and hachnasa. But first, we're going to have to understand how he gets to the fact that this is Rabbi Yehuda and on what was it said. So he says, Ditanya. How do I know this? Because of the following braita. Here's a different braita talking about passing and throwing and all that. If you throw, mirishut yachid, the rishut harabim, va'avar arba amot b'rishut harabim. Okay, remember, there's different actions. There's passing from one domain to the other, and then there's carrying within within the public domain. So if I throw something from my public space, my private, into public, but it goes not only into the public, but I aim it far, or I don't know, forget my aim. I throw it far, and it even goes for Amod and Rishut Rabim. Rabbi Yehuda mechayev v'chachamim potrim. So Rabbi Yehuda says you're obligated. The rabbis say you're exempt. So now comes Rabbi Yosef, and he says it was on that statement that Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, mechayev hayah Rabbi Yehuda shtayim. When Rabbi Yehuda says chayav, what does he mean? You're chayav twice. Why are you chayav twice? One for passing from one domain to the other, and one for carrying within Rishut Rabim for Amod. Echad mishum hotza'ah, v'echad mishum ha'avara. Now, how does he prove that it must be? Now, it just says Rabbi Yehuda mechayev. How do we know Rabbi Yehuda is mechayev shtayim? He says it must be Rabbi Yehuda's mechayev shtayim. Why? We'll read the source again. If he says you're chayav one, what are the rabbis saying? You're exempt. That would be very odd. If he says you're chayav one sin offering, the rabbis say you're exempt. If I throw something from my public domain to my private domain to a public domain, and it not only does it go into the public domain, but it goes for Amod in the public domain, I'm going to be exempt according to the rabbis. That's ridiculous, right? You passed an item from Rishut Rabim to from Rishut Yachid to Rishut Rabim. How could you possibly be patur? So therefore, it must be what? It must be when they say potrim, they're potrim for the carrying it in Rishut Rabim. They obligate you for passing it, but they exempt you from the second thing. Rabbi Yehuda comes and says, chayav, you're chayav both. And that's how Rabbi Yosef proves it must be that Rabbi Yehuda is mechayav both. It's Rabbi Yehuda, it's not Rebbe. Now they say, no, we don't accept this reading, you're reading Rabbi Yosef. Mimai, Dilma la'olam emalach Rabbi Yehuda, chadu d'mechayev, v'Rabbanan patre legamre. What you thought was ridiculous, we don't actually think it's so ridiculous. Maybe the rabbis do exempt you. Why? What would be the case? Kegon, the case would be, da'amach, ad denaftale l'rishut harabim tanuach. The case is where you said, I wanted to go, I'm throwing this, and this is why aim is so important. I'm throwing this, and I want it to land right in the border, right into the beginning of Rishut Rabim. And what happened? What you did didn't happen, because it went for Amod, and now what you wanted didn't happen, right? To Rabbi Yehuda Savar. Now, here comes the machloket. Theoretically, you would say both should exempt in that case, because what happens? In order for something to be melechat machshevet, what do you need? Your intent has to have been fulfilled. Your intent wasn't fulfilled. You wanted it in the public domain, but you didn't want it there. You wanted it there, right? Or actually the reverse, right? My hands are doing the wrong thing. You wanted it here, and it went there, right? It went much farther than what you wanted. So you didn't get what you wanted. However, what's the machloket? Why would Rabbi Yehuda obligate you? And then in this case, we have Rabbi Yehuda only obligates you one, and it doesn't explain a case where Rabbi Yehuda was obligating you two. Rabbi Yehuda savar amrinam kluta kamishuncha bit avele machshavto. Comes Rabbi Yehuda and says, no, what you wanted happened, because as it went through the airspace, we view it as if it landed. So theoretically, even though ultimately it didn't land where you wanted, it did theoretically land right in the entranceway to Rosh Hashanah when it got there. Once it goes through the airspace, it's as if it landed. So therefore, what you wanted happened. The Rabbanan Savri lo amrin an kluta kamishum uncha, but lo et avdele machshavto. What you wanted didn't actually happen. Aval, except back to our main issue, atoladav b'mkom av lo mechayev Rabbi Yehuda, but he isn't mechayev too. So now they say, well, actually, lo salkadatach. We actually think it's hard to suggest that Rabbi Yehuda isn't mechayev toladav b'mkom av. We're going to have an interesting reasoning. It's not exactly a great proof, and they're going to reject it right away. But they're going to first suggest that maybe Rabbi Yehuda, from the following source, we can see he's mechayev. If you do a toladav and av malacha, you actually have to bring 2 sin offerings, which would then make the statement of Shmuel make a lot of sense. So we'll say it was about Rabbi Yehuda. Titania, Rabbi Yehuda, mosif afa shovet v'amidaktek. Rabbi Yehuda adds to the list of avot malachot also the shovet. That's when you take a utensil and you straighten out the strands of the warp. V'hamidaktek, that's when you hit the weft, the strands of the weft, and you hit it to kind of get everything into place. He adds those to the list. Amrulo, and the rabbi said to him, we don't agree with you. Shovet hareu b'chlal mesach. That's part of a toladav mesach. And midaktek hareu b'chlal oreg. That's part of the weaving. So now, how does the Gemara understand this at first glance? My lav da'avina l'travayu b'hadei adade. When Rabbi Yehuda said add these to the list, maybe he meant if you do both oreg and midaktek, and you do both shovet and mesach at the same time, you'll be obligated to. He still views them as a tolada, even though it's a little strange because he adds it to the list of avot, and that's why we'll reject this. But they seem to be saying he adds it, meaning they didn't really think he's adding avot malachot. He's adding that you're chayiv as if it's an av malacha because it's a tolada, and you'd be obligated if you do 2 actions, tolada and an av, you'd actually have to bring 2, and that would make sense. But the Gemara rejects this and says, Mimai. No, it could be he's talking about just, let's say you just did midaktek, okay, and you didn't also do oreg. And Rabbi Yehuda, toladam b'mkom av lo mechayev, he's not mechayev toladam b'mkom av, ubahaka mitflage. Rabbi Yehuda savar hane avot ninu. Rabbi Yehuda actually thinks that it's an av malacha. And this goes back to what we said when we had the 39. We quoted this and we said it's not so clear that everybody thinks the magic number is 39. Some people had more. The Rabbanan Savrai Hanu Toladot Ninu, and the rabbis think these are Toladot. And now they say, and we'll prove it, because Teidad de Katani Rabbi Yehuda Mosif, it says he adds to the list of 39 malacha. So we have our Bishlama Avot, my Mosif Avot. If you say Avot, it means I'm adding this to the list of Avot. And like Yamar Toladot, my Mosif. Right? It doesn't make sense to say Mosif if you're adding Toladot. You wouldn't add it to the list then. There's tons of Toladot. Itmar Nami, it was also said, Rabbi of Rabbi Yosef Amri Travayu, Lo Chiev Rabbi Yehuda Ela Echat. Okay, the sugya almost ends with this line. We're not fully done with it, but we're almost done with it. Basically, it says, Rabbi Yehuda, we know, it was said elsewhere that Rabbi Yehuda is only Mechayev 1 on Hotzah and Hachnasa, and therefore we're back to our original question, and they don't answer it, they don't really address it. We're still stuck with the question, which is this source that they said in the name of Shmuel, that somebody says, you're obligated to, in this case, for Hotzah and Hachnasa, is not very clear what he was talking about because we can't really find anybody who holds that you'd be obligated both. And therefore, we're kind of left with the question. But now they go back to Rabbi Yosef. Who was Rabbi Yosef? Rabbi Yosef was the one who said that, that he thought it was Rabbi Yehuda, and he was talking about this other case about throwing into Rashid Rabin, and then it went 4 Amot in Rashid Rabin. So now they say, Amar le Ravina Rabashi. Ravina says to Rabashi, what we originally thought, Rabbi Yosef thought, I don't even understand that. Because ilahacha kabayla, lahachi lo kabayla. Ilahachi kabayla, lahachi lo kabayla. Okay, what does this mean? Sounds like a bit of mumbo jumbo. Again, why would you even be obligated twice? Either you wanted it to land right in the beginning of Rashid Rabim, or you wanted it to land 4 Amot into Rashid Rabim. But if you wanted one, you didn't want the other. And therefore, again, you wouldn't be obligated to because forget about Tolada and Av, you wouldn't be chayav too because you obviously didn't want it to land in 2 different places. So therefore, how could you be obligated for both? You're only obligated for what you intended. So Amalei, the answer is, Ba'omer kol makom shetirtzeh tanuach. It must be a case where he says, wherever, I don't care where it lands. In which case, then it landed in 2 places basically, and then you can be obligated for both. Okay, last part for today, since we're talking about aiming and all this, So now they're going to say, Pshita nitkaven l'zrok shmona v'zarak arba. If I intended to throw 8, we also saw this before, I intended to throw something 8 amot, but I ended up throwing it 4 amot, where I did something wrong, but I didn't do what I wanted. But obviously you're going to be obligated. Sharei katav shem mishimon. It's like writing the first 2 letters. You did, right? You intended 8, you did 4, so you did part of the act, right? And the part of the act that's actually a full act, just like shem mishimon, so obviously you're obligated. But what if you intended 4 and you did 8 and you missed this is like the Price is Right? You go over, you bust, right? So you went over, you missed what you were trying to do. Mahu. Mi amrinan, do we say ha'apikle? In the end, he did pass it over 4. Or do we say no, he passed it and where he wanted it to go, it didn't go. So they say, didn't we just say that Rabbeinu says to Ravashi, if you say you don't care, then you'll be obligated, but it sounds like if you do care and it doesn't land where you wanted, like our case, then you're not going to be obligated. And some people actually view this, that this rejects both. It rejects even the pshita. What we thought was obvious maybe isn't obvious, because even though it's part of it, it's not the same as Shem Shimon, because you intended for it to get to one place and it got somewhere else, and therefore you're not. The Rambam actually thinks it's only rejecting the second, and the Rambam thinks the pshita still stays, even though we have this logic. Okay? And then they say, last line for today, what do you do with that? Midami, that's not the same. Hatam kama dilo ktiv shem lo machtiv le Shimon. You can't write Shimon without writing the letters Shin Mem, correct? Right? If you passed over that, you wouldn't have Shimon. But hacha kama dilo zarik arba lo mizdar karleish timna. You don't have to throw 4 to get to 8, right? You can throw 8 directly. So therefore, it's not the same case. Okay, we'll end with that today, and we'll get to more issues about throwing and from different domains tomorrow.